This is Truth Be Told.
That not only are there reptilians here,
new evidence of UFO fleets.
We were close to nuclear war.
To help you transform so that you can live your highest truth.
We're not being told just because we're not ready for it.
Radio stations of frequency, vibrational.
I was a homicide detective with LAPD.
UFOs increase. Visitations. Today we're going to unearth mysteries. We're going to explore the enigmatic world of the Andean Huacas with archaeologist and author Camille M. Sauvé. Camille shares her deep connection to these pre-Columbian sacred sites, known for their unique spiritual and cosmological significance. She's going to reveal how these ancient sites facilitate altered states of consciousness, and offering her perspective on why mainstream scholars often overlook evidence of a once global prehistoric culture. Camille also discusses the decline of these civilizations and what modern humans can learn from their legacies. I don't think you want to miss this show today. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time, Camille M. Sauvé. Hi, Camille. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
All the way from Peru.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Tony.
Now, so were you born here in the States?
Yes, I was born in California in the Bay Area.
Oh, nice. Well,
Yeah.
how did you get down to Peru? Is that something that you always was destined to do, or always wanted to be a part of the Peruvian culture?
Well, I got an invitation from a girlfriend who was living in Ecuador at the time, in Cuenca.
Right.
And she had always wanted to go and visit Machu Picchu.
Of course.
And I decided, well, I'll join her. And that was about 14 years ago. And we had an amazing time at Machu Picchu. And it was a time when they didn't really have the circus that is there now. And you could actually spend a lot of time just exploring the ruins and not having guides scream at you. So it was a good time.
Well,
and anyway, I fell in love with the Peruvian culture and all the amazing archaeology sites here. So it's really
there's
fantastic.
tons of them. There's tons of them.
Absolutely.
Well, for the people that are just tuning in, like you said, you wrote a book. It's Sorcerers of Stone, and I like the architects of the three ages. And for some people out there, what are the three ages? I'm curious to hear yours.
Basically, when you're visiting Peru, you'll notice at a lot of the archaeology sites that there are very different looking styles of architecture. And I, as I started doing some research, I discovered that there was a Peruvian researcher here who gave them names to all the three different styles. And he called the oldest style Hanampacha, the middle style, which is the megalithic style, he called that Urampacha, and the more recent style is Ukupacha. And the interesting thing about this is that often when you take official guides and tours around these sites, you will often hear a repeated phrase that the Inca built everything.
Right.
But, I noticed that the styles were so dramatically different. And when I met locals, around Sacsayhuaman and Chinchero, they said these things were there way before the Inca arrived on the scene. So it seems like, we're getting some incongruities as far as history,
right,
and the narrative of history. So who do we listen to?
Right. Well, I know here in America, a lot of native tribes are very hesitant to speak with a lot of maybe white-skinned people,
Yeah.
and so Is it the same in Peru, or are they more open to speak about their culture or ancient culture, not just culture?
Yeah, there is some hesitancy to talk about it. About some aspects of their culture, and because of the history of repression here, and with the Spanish Inquisition and destruction of idols, they basically don't want to reveal these places where they're still keeping that lineage of initiation and and some of their key items and artifacts. And I believe they're probably underground in what they call chincanas, which are under subterranean caverns. Right. And I think, so, they do tell some people that they trust, and they feel that they can give this information to without revealing, too much to the general public.
Now, I've seen this word, and I hope I'm saying it right. Wakas? Wakas?
Wakas, yes.
Wakas. So can you explain what that is, and how did you get interested in, the pre-Columbian and Andean sacred sites? I mean, because there's sites all over the world, so why specifically this, area?
It seems like there's probably more archaeology sites and sacred sites than practically anywhere in the world, with the exception of maybe Egypt. I got interested basically because I noticed this very ancient style, which very few people are really aware of, and that's what Alfredo Gamarra, the researcher here in Cusco, he described that as Hanampacha, and it's such an unusual looking style, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to modern interpretations of architecture, right? Because this is not like obviously made for shelter or as the temples that we know in Egypt. It's much more organic, and they tend to have a lot of basins and channels carved into the rock. And also they have these niches, which are very near the ground and often on top of water sources. So it's a very unique style of architecture that it's not just in Peru, it's found in many other countries around the world. But there's such a prevalence of it here in Peru that it's you practically bump into it everywhere you go. So, that's what makes it interesting, and I find this to be the most interesting architectural style. And also, you can tell that later cultures also revered this style, and they built on top of it. Very carefully, like they put megaliths on top of this style, and then the Inca or the Quilque or Wari, which were other native cultures in the Andes, they also built around these places. So they seem to believe that these sites were somewhat special and sacred, and I found that really interesting because it was something I was unfamiliar with until I came to Peru, and really examined this about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Well, this is not, hopefully it's not too off topic. It just popped into my head. But what is your thoughts? And I believe I've asked this before of other people. What are your thoughts about a lot of these areas, Egypt, China, Peru use pyramids, and it's so similar to each other all over the world. Through your studies and your research, why are they so similar? And it's to each other. And I mean, was this taught? because we talk about UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials. What are your thoughts on how these pyramids are so similar all over the world?
Well, I think they represent like connection from the earth, from our material realm to the spiritual realm.
Oh, nice.
And there is some ideas that these were also used for higher states of consciousness. They were kind of like initiatory buildings where the candidate or the initiate would go inside these granite boxes, and it looks like they were transported to higher dimensions, probably from the frequencies in the granite and groundwater, which was underneath these pyramids.
Right.
Which was it was acting as an electromagnetic powerhouse that could transport people to higher dimensions and maybe to facilitate seeing these dimensions as well. So
yeah, I always found that fascinating. I just because I interviewed somebody from China, and they were saying that these pyramids are huge and just like, and they look exactly like pyramids in Egypt and in South America and Mexico, and I just I just found them fascinating that they are so similar to each other, and they don't even
and you're right, they do exist on every continent, and and they often have a flat top as well.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Like, what was that? What was the flat top about?
Right. Maybe, and what's the meaning? Yeah.
Maybe we haven't quite made that ascension yet, and so it's just a reminder. we have to reach the top and put a cap on it. Yeah.
Well, can you explain the three distinct architectural styles that are found at the majority of these sacred sites? I know we talked briefly about how they're placed and stuff, but can you go a little bit more detail on the more distinct style of these architectural sites?
So the first style, which I mentioned before, is called Hanampacha, and it's they're usually made out of limestones, and it's a very hard form of a limestone. And you see these sites that they have seats, they seem to be molded in there into the rocks. You see chakanas that are on the sides of the rocks, niches, basins, water channels, and one of the features is that there always seems to be water which is connected with these monuments, and they're either running underneath or around the monument, and some of them are massive, and they must be 100 tons.
Wow.
And they're very different from the second world, which is called Urampacha. And the second world is the classical megalithic style that we think about when we're thinking about Peru. And it's where you have polygonal shapes and they're fitted together. You see an absence of mortar, and it seems like the rocks were actually softened at one time because they fit so perfectly together in their seams. So this is what we would call the second style, Urampacha. And the third style is a form of building where usually you use rougher rocks, and there's a mortar, and the rocks are typically much smaller. And these generally are associated with the Inca style, the Wari and the Quilque, which are more recent cultures to Peru.
Right.
So my book really focuses on more of the older styles, so the megalithic and the Hanapacha style, or the first world style, and I try to explain how how these were built, and possibly who built them, by looking at some theosophists like Helen Blavatsky and Rudolf Steiner, and what they viewed through the Akashic records. So, and they had some really profound insights in the Akashic records. And Steiner talks about the ancient Lemurian builders who basically can mold rock very easily, and they use natural formations to build their caves in the early stages of Lemurian life, and over time they added more architectural elements, but it was basically caves that these early proto-Lemurians were building, and that's what's really fascinating, is because you see so many cave systems all around Peru. You see them in Mexico, and you also see them in Turkey. Many places around the world have some fantastic cave systems, and the Andes is known for having so many of them, which they say some of them connect from Cusco all the way to Tiwanaku.
Wow.
Up to Ecuador. So, and they really haven't been explored, because the few people that have managed to get into them have, either found themselves couldn't get out of them, or if they did manage to get out, many of them went crazy. So it's a pretty dangerous place to explore.
I would say so. Yeah. And I think, like you were saying earlier, when you talk to the locals and they talk about how these, a lot of people thought they were Incas, and it goes way before the Incas. Do we have any inclination of who these people were, or do they have a title, or any?
Yeah, that's nobody. I mean, there are some ancient legends that talk about the Viracochas, and there was one main god called Viracocha, and he also had his helpers, which were also called Viracochas, and they kind of had their city in the Tiwanaku area, and these were the ancient megalith builders, and the temple of Tiwanaku was considered to be built by Viracocha, and in his civilizing role for the Peru area, there was a path leading up from Tiwanaku all the way up to the Pacific, and this path shows like major archaeology sites in this trajectory that Viracocha went. So including Cusco, the Coricancha, or the Sun Temple, and all the way up to Cajamarca in northern Peru. So they do have some historical legend about these ancient megalith builders.
Yeah, because this is off your website. I'm just, for the people that are watching our YouTube channel, just seeing some of these stone that, there's no way, humans, even 3 or 4 people could move or place these stones into place. Very precise. The cuts are amazing. What is your theory on how they were moved? And how did they get so precise with their cuts?
I have a theory that these were geopolymers. I know it's very unpopular in some circles, but with that photo, you can actually see what the scoop marks. I don't know if you noticed that, but you can frequently see scoop marks and strange pillow-like, forms that, and no indication that they were cut with stone. They have stone tools and bronze tools, but this is metamorphosed limestone, and it's extremely hard. And the Inca and Mari tools really weren't strong enough to cut into this. But the way I see it is, and this is backed up by some recent research done by scientists from Russia, that that when they examined this outer stone, they found that it is a limestone, and it looks like it came from the quarry, which is very near Sauvé. But they found that instead of seeing fossils in the limestone, which you usually see, there were no fossils. So they indicated that they believed at one time the quarry rock was pulverized, and there was some kind of a agglomeration of different materials that was used to harden the stone. So to me, that's what it looks like. And to get these perfect seams where one rock fits exactly into another rock, that would seem the way to do it through geopolymer. So
that's amazing. Wow. Wouldn't you like to just go a time machine and go back just to see how they made all that stuff? I would love that. Would be just out of this world to do that.
Absolutely.
This actually caught my eye, and I'm curious on how do the writings of clairvoyants such as Rudolf Steiner, Edgar Casey, Madame I don't remember how to pronounce her, Blavatsky, provide insight, when it comes to the construction and the purpose of these sites.
Rudolf Steiner wrote in his cosmic memory book. He said he could see early humanity at that time, and he believed that humanity was of a more Pleistocene constitution, especially in the early Lemurian period. So there was also a belief that the atmosphere was less dense, and this is what Rudolf Steiner said. So there was less gravity and a less dense atmosphere. And so because of that, the human beings at that time were more ethereal and also more connected to the earth. They had not yet crystallized into a physical being, and their intelligence was more flowing with the ether, basically, and the elements of earth. So it was only until, according to Steiner, that humanity really started getting more of our three or five senses, is when we started to develop into a body and have a brain. And then we unfortunately lost some of our spiritual aspects of ourselves. So, and this is something that theosophists in general believe, including Helena Blavatsky, and that humanity was seated on the earth, and we actually evolved with the changing conditions of the earth as well. So we went through a more Pleistocene nature to a more concrete nature over millions and millions of years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I knew more about Edgar Casey's work than I did the other two. So thank you for sharing that, because I don't know if a lot of people know them as well as Edgar Casey. So it's fascinating to get some of these perspectives of not only different archaeologists, but locals, and then just these world-renowned clairvoyants that are so precise on their predictions and their visions. So it's good that you kind of went to all the ways to hopefully bring some truth to this area, for sure. And what was it?
Well, sometimes,
go ahead.
Sometimes that's the only, I think that's, by looking at psychics and clairvoyance, sometimes I think that's the only way we can see what happened, millions of years ago, in our Earth's history and humanity's history. So there's no written documents from those times that are survived. So how can we really see these worlds? But we do have that capacity to actually tap into the Akashic records, and some more so than others, like Blavatsky and Steiner.
And when we've talked a lot about the Akashic records, how does one tap into that? How did you learn, or how do you learn to tap into these records that every being on this planet has?
I wish I could figure that out, because that's how I would do my exploration. That's why I'm kind of referring to Rudolf Steiner and Blavatsky, because these were people who could do it, and I do know there's people today also who can do that, but I unfortunately I haven't figured it all out.
Right. So what happened to these civilizations? We've talked many about the Roman Empire, the Egyptians, all kinds of different people from all over the world and their civilizations. But many of these areas kind of just disappeared, and we really don't know a lot what happened to them. What is your thoughts, and what is the research saying about where these civilizations, where did they go wrong, and what happened to these people?
Well, there seems to be a lot of historical myths, legends from many different cultures. Some have claimed 200 different cultures around the world have flood myths, and others speak of reoccurring catastrophes, including the Hopi and the Popol Vuh, which is creation myths from Mexico, and so including Plato has talked about the time when Atlantis was destroyed, but according to others like Blavatsky, Atlantis had a series of catastrophic events, so it wasn't just one, and these went over a period of, I believe it was 250,000 years. So, the Earth has seen repeat catastrophic events over the eons, and you can go back to also Lemurian times, which in the latter stages seem to also correspond with the beginnings of the Atlantean period, and they also saw destruction with fire, water, earthquakes. So, and these are pretty reoccurring themes that you will find. The Australians also have these legends about catastrophes. You'll find it in North America, Asia, the Perunas, Inamu Elish documents. It's very common. So we really can't dismiss them when you see so many cultures repeating the same belief and narrative. Though today, historians will say, oh, these are myths and legends, but there's, to have so many of them be part of the foundational stories of creation, I don't think we can dismiss those.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we also talk many times about ley lines and earth power spots. And why do you think a lot of these ancient sites, all over the world, are placed on many of these ley lines and power spots? What is the purpose, and what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are this is where people went basically for healing and for altered states as well. And you can see here in Peru, you see a lot of medicine men who are going into the Huacas, which are in Saxy Women's Park. And there they have, they do ceremonies where they put out, flowers, fruits, quitus, which are coca leaves,
Right.
Basically to honor the ancestors, the Apus, which are the sacred mountains, Pachamama. But in historical documents, they also describe that this is where the priest class went to communicate with the gods in the spiritual realm. So there's something about these wakas that are also power sources, and raise the consciousness and help the sensitive to really go into other realms and meet possibly their ancestors, their guides, and hopefully, they come out with some wisdom and some guidance about where to go in the future and to protect the people in the community. So this seems to be very common, not only in Peru, but in other communities. It's like to guide the wisdom of the people, to use these wakas and to and also these are initiatory rites as well. So to know that we are just not the material, we are spiritual, and to meet the natives that are in other dimensions.
And have you noticed first of all, what traditions of the spirituality that you see is still around? I mean, we weren't there at the beginning where these people, how they worshipped or how they, worshiped the gods and spoke to the gods. But from what you're, speaking to the locals, what traditions have kind of survived, all these thousands of years?
Yeah.
Can you?
Well, that's the nice thing about being in Peru, because a lot of these rites and ceremonies are still very active, especially in the communities that are high up in the mountains, and they haven't really connected that much with the Western culture, and especially when the Spanish came in the 16th century. Many of these smaller communities ended up hiding from them in the mountains, going into the jungles. And so they kept a lot of their customs, pretty pure.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And so today also, so many Westerners are coming to Peru to experience ayahuasca, uchuma, and to really get connected to the earth and to the spiritualism that is here in Peru. So it's also bringing a pride back to the people, and so a lot of local Peruvians really think this is like, wow, Westerners are coming here to learn from us. So it's now bringing back their culture and more pride about their culture, and so you're seeing a lot more ceremonies, a lot more, a lot more emphasis on the older ways rather than the more, Catholic ways that were brought to them.
Right. Yeah, and that's unfortunate that, we had to take away many of their traditions and their own religion and just because it's kind of like seeing much of Europe being destroyed during World War II because of greed and all, but all this history was completely destroyed. It would be nice to see the original, origins still in the modern day world. So, and that leads me to another question: is many historians and archaeologists of today, modern day, deny much of world history and the past. And I know when you talk about the worldwide culture, what does that mean, and why do you think these modern day archaeologists and historians deny it?
I don't know if it's a conscious thing. I think that archaeology tends to be, the archaeologists tend to know their country that they're working. So whether it's Turkey or Peru or, China, they tend to have, the perspective of what's going on within that particular culture. And, I'm sure there are many that are now beginning to see these similarities, but it's not really, I don't believe it's encouraged in academia to really, explore, indications of a worldwide ancient civilization.
Right.
I think that that's a taboo subject, and I think archaeologists, want to play it safe and basically just stick with things that are going to get them promotions and tenure in the university, which is kind of unfortunate, because today I think there's so much evidence, and with the with the internet, we can share photos, we can share ideas, and you can see these, you can see the similarities. So to keep, saying, oh no, this is only, this is only Inca culture, or this is only Persian culture, when you can see the same forms, the same shapes,
right.
It's, to me, it seems so obvious that we're looking at one culture that was really around the world, but that's really outside of the boundaries of, of acceptable opinion in most archaeological circles.
And what?
But I think today, it's there's so many people exploring these sites that I hope that it's going to crack open a little bit the closed-mindedness in a lot of academia.
Well, I think it should show you how many people that do visit these ancient sites all over the world. It should show, that people are interested in truth and in answers, and, just where we come from. And so, it's not like it's just a few hundred people. It's millions of people that visit these sites all over the world. So, yeah, it's
exactly. And sometimes just getting them to look, like, why, does this look like all of this stuff is all Inca?
Right.
Just be observant, and you will see dramatic differences in styles. So I think we should always question official narratives that really don't make sense, and this can be applied to a lot of different topics as well, besides archaeology. It's always good to be skeptical, open-minded, but also use your own understanding and intuitive understanding about how the world works.
And before we get out of here, I'm curious because, modern humans, like you said, even though I took a DNA test, it mostly says I'm pretty much 100% in the European area, not Africa, not Asia, not South America. But how can we relate that to who we are? What does it say about who we are? Understanding these cultures from all around the world, because if we go far enough back, we all come from one source. So what can understanding these sites really kind of explain who we are?
Yeah, I mean, it's are you mainly you're talking pyramids or
just the take away from the information we're talking about today, about how human beings, how we have evolved from, it seems like very primitive, but it's I think they were pretty advanced in many of these cultures that today we're like, oh, it's very primitive, but I feel like we were quite a bit advanced, more than we think.
It's hard to dismiss what you're looking at when you go to Giza, and it wasn't primitive at all.
No.
In fact, how would we do that today? Many architects don't know how they would lift these stones and place them so exacting. And so to me, it really shows that we have this past that is much more interesting and much more mysterious, than modern archaeologists can really explain, because they tend to look at it in a linear fashion, that we came from a more primitive man and the more modern man is the most advanced. But if you go back to 12,000 years ago, we had monuments that were so technically advanced, and these monuments seem to be connected with the earth field and the geomagnetism and the telluric currents. So these advanced cultures seem to be very connected with the earth and very connected with the energy of the earth. We don't know how to do that today.
Right.
In fact, we're blanketing our atmosphere with so many, crazy frequencies that we don't even know how that's going to affect us for future generations or even our own generation. So we lost something in the process of becoming modern, and we seem to be more and more disconnected from the earth and the life in the earth. And so who's more advanced? I tend to think it's these ancient cultures who understood it all.
They did. They did.
Are the more advanced people and civilizations. Yeah.
And what I find fascinating is, as we continue to study these sites more and more and more, the age gets older and older and older. And from what your thoughts are, how old do you think many of these sites are, especially down in Peru? I mean, how old do you think some of these sites go back to? Because if it was way before the Incas, we know it's quite a ways back.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have a chapter in my book about time, and even the Akashic Records readers often had a problem with that, because the Akasha doesn't really have a timeline,
right?
Chronological timeline for you to follow, because it's just everything is recorded in this one library. So it seemed to be like the readers of the Akashic can see things, but they didn't necessarily know exactly, how far back we're going back in prehistory. Steiner does give some clues, and he does speak about the kinds of animals that he sees in early Lemurian times and the type of the atmosphere. And Blavatsky does this somewhat as well. And it does seem to be like the early mammalians were around at a time where there was no large mammals, just smaller mammals, a lot of bird life, and a lot of tropical fern-like trees, which were all over the earth. So I took a look at this, and it seems to be like a period of what would be called the early Eocene period, and that would be about 55 million years ago.
Oh,
but as to whether the megaliths or the Hanapacha work was done at that time, I don't know. There was a section in Blavatsky's book, The Secret Doctrine, where she said the megalith builders were about 18 million years ago. But as I said, time is a hard one to pin down.
Yeah.
And at her time in the 19th century, they didn't even think the Earth was around that long, just maybe 200 million years. So, and these were the scientists of the day. So, it's hard to say exactly when these things were built. But if we're talking, even if we're talking 4 million years ago, and she's off
by a long time,
75% or so, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is great. Well,
yeah.
I love having you here, and I hope you come back. And I know you probably have, more projects coming up. And do you have projects, new books, any other new books coming out, or speaking anywhere, or that people might want to jump on the bandwagon?
Well, I've been on a few podcasts already, basically, I basically will go on any podcast with anybody who will ask me to come on. As far as live speaking engagements, I haven't got anything in the near future. Hopefully something will come up. But I am looking at another book right now, specifically about the types of humanity that have been around, and specifically Peru is a fascinating place right now because the Nazca mummies are getting some airtime, and I don't know if you know much about them, but they're really fascinating. And then we have these beings with very elongated heads.
Yeah, I've spoken to Brian Forrester many times about that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there seems to be a lot of people here who believe in dwarfs, and they see them.
Oh. And
sometimes a lot of them are at sacred sites or in archaeology sites. So, this is something I'm exploring right now, and that may be a second book coming up.
I think it should be. And I can't wait to have you back and talk about it again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony.
Well, thank you, Camille. And just go to sorcerersofstone.com. You can pick up the book on Amazon, I'm sure on her website. And it's always great to support each other and each other's projects. And so please support Camille. Sauvé, I love how you say your name. That's nice. And so please tune in every Friday with me. I'm back from Europe. I got some good stories to tell of visiting Vlad the Impaler's jail space that he was imprisoned in Budapest, and some other ghost stories from some of the castles I visited. So I can't wait to share that with you all. But tune in Mondays for Minutemen Report with Robert Hensley at 3 o'clock, Bonnie Burkert for Truth Be Told Transformation on Wednesday at 3, and of course me every Friday. But until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and thank you again for supporting Truth Be Told. Thank you. Bye. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows.